Alright, so today we're going to be talking about a sensitive subject in all workplace environments, not just EMS, sexual harassment. Now, I know there is a belief in EMS that if you are going to be in this field, you need to accept the fact that men and women of EMS are lewd and crude. They tell sexual jokes and make sexual comments, and if you don't like it, then you should choose a different career. Well, that is just not true, and if you are exposed to behavior that makes you uncomfortable, you have the right to expect that behavior to stop so you can enjoy your career in EMS. Alright, so first let's go ahead and define sexual harassment. The law defines it as any unwelcomed sexual advances, requests for sexual favors, and other verbal or physical conduct of a sexual nature. Alright, so in simplified terms, let's break this definition into 3 words. Unwanted sexual activity. Unwanted is not wanted or desired. Sexual regardless of gender or position, no matter if you're male, female, supervisor, or the lowest person on the totem pole. Activity can be actions or words. The key term here is unwanted. The actions and or words must be of a sexual nature, and the recipient of this conduct must not desire the advances. Again, the actions are unwanted. So these are going to be some of the more important terms to keep in mind when we are talking about sexual harassment. Respect and equality are going to be 2 of the most important when discussing the prevention of sexual harassment. Respect has great importance in everyday life, and when it is given and shown to fellow employees, the first steps in preventing harassment are taken. Equality is the same. When it is practiced and individuals are treated as equals, regardless of sex, sexual harassment can be prevented. It's also important to understand what the term flirtation is, so it can be distinguished from sexual harassment. Flirtation is behavior that demonstrates a playful sexual attraction to someone. The key here would be a welcomed sexual attraction. Quid pro quo is a form of sexual harassment where the offender expects sexual favors from the victim in exchange for advancement within the company, wage increases, bonuses, work assignments, etc. Alright, so there are 2 types of sexual harassment that are recognized by the law. Quid pro quo sexual harassment, which we already discussed, and the hostile environment sexual harassment. This form of sexual harassment is more geared towards feeling comfortable at work, feeling that you can perform your duties. You feel safe. Respected at work, either you feel comfortable. If this is altered by someone making sexual advances, sexual comments or jokes, anything that makes you feel uncomfortable, that's going to fall under this hostile environment of sexual harassment. If you're working in a hostile environment, you need to take actions to stop it, which we'll discuss later in the presentation. But these are both the 2 types of sexual harassment that can be filed under law. And they can involve, male to female, female to male. It doesn't matter. Anyone can be a victim of sexual harassment. Anyone can sexually harass another person. Let's discuss some examples of sexual harassment. You have the touching, which include grabbing, tickling, pushing, cornering, any type of physical contact. And then you have the non-touching, verbal, name-calling, threats, written notes, jokes, rumors, comments on body, gestures, looks, leers. And remember that these are just some examples. It's not an all-inclusive list. Alright, now how do we identify sexual harassment? I have a list here. Victim or harasser may be a woman or man, like we discussed earlier. The victim does not have to be of the opposite sex. It can be male to male, female to female. The harasser can be the victim's supervisor, agent of the employer, its supervisor in another area, coworker, or non-employee. The victim does not have to be the person harassed, but could be anyone affected by offensive conduct. So say somebody is on the phone and they're joking with a family member or a friend or something and making sexual comments and sexual jokes, and you are hearing this and you are offended and you feel uncomfortable, that is a form of sexual harassment as well. Sexual harassment may occur without economic injury or discharge of the victim from his or her job. Sexual harassment, by definition, requires the harasser's conduct to be unwelcome, just as we discussed earlier. Sexual harassment includes unwelcome sexual advances, requests for sexual favors, other verbal or physical conduct of a sexual nature. Constitutes sexual harassment when this conduct explicitly or implicitly affects an individual's employment, unreasonably interferes with an individual's work performance, or creates an intimidating, hostile, or offensive work environment. So that's just more information on the hostile work environment form of sexual harassment. Alright, so who decides if sexual harassment is occurring? And that's, of course, going to be the individual who feels harassed and or discriminated against in a sexual manner. And then once the case would go to court, the judge, of course, would be the one to make the final judgment if sexual harassment has occurred in the workplace. I do have an attachment for a video here. If you want to go ahead and pause this recording, you can watch it, and then I'll discuss it a little bit after you've watched it. Alright, so in this video, the first little skit could be viewed as flirtation. It was definitely a welcomed invitation. He invited her to dinner. She was happy to go as co-workers, as friends. The second one would be more of the quid pro quo. You do something for me, go out with me, and I'll give you this new position with the company. We can work something out. You can see that the female, she is a bit uncomfortable with his invitation. And then the third one is verging on the hostile work environment. He's massaging, touching. She's obviously uncomfortable. She's just not really enjoying his advances at all. All right. So what actions are not considered sexual harassment? We discussed earlier some things that can be viewed as sexual harassment, but it's important to know what's not sexual harassment just as much as it is to know what is sexual harassment. And according to the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, the law does not prohibit simple teasing, offhanded comments, isolated incidents that are not very serious. Such conduct may violate an employer's policy, potentially resulting in discipline or termination, but will not affect a reasonable person's ability to work. Okay, so I have a few scenarios that we're going to go over. But first, I want you to consider these questions in the scenarios to follow. First of all, was the conduct sexual in nature or related to sex? Was the conduct unwelcome, unwanted, humiliating, offensive, or a violation of dignity? Or was the submission or rejection of the conduct tied to an employment action or condition of employment? Was the conduct severe or pervasive enough to create a hostile working environment? Okay, so here's our first scenario. Tell me what you think. While at work, Tina frequently makes personal phone calls to her friends. Her conversations are loud and generously sprinkled with foul and obscene language. Her partner cannot help but overhear her conversations. Can Tina's behavior be interpreted as sexually harassing? All right, so let's go ahead and remember the 4 questions, or the 3 questions that we need to think about in regarding is sexually harassing or not. Okay, so look at these questions. Take a moment. All right, now let's see what's going on. So yes, Tina is performing a form of harassment. Harassment in the workplace does not have to be directed at a particular individual. Tina's coworkers may view her behavior as offensive and unwelcome. They may believe that the behavior creates for them a hostile working environment, even though she is not speaking directly to them. So it's important to remember that the hostile working environment, is anything that makes you feel like you are not safe at work, or you are just creating a place where they do not feel comfortable. And now here is another example that we can look at. Alex persists in asking his coworker Susan out to dinner, even though she turns him down each and every time he requests a date. She's told him several times to stop asking. Alex's behavior does not constitute sexual harassment. Now this is a question, okay? Alex's behavior does not constitute sexual harassment because sexual harassment may only occur between a male boss and a female subordinate. So is this true or false?